The thick jungle of Yucatan whispered with the sound of insects and distant birds. For weeks, the team had been cutting through vines, mud, and stone to reach the ruins buried under the canopy. At last, the trees parted and the explorers stood before what looked like a massive staircase of stone. A forgotten Mayan temple, dark with age, rose from the earth as if it had been waiting for centuries. Daniel stood at the front of the group, sweat running down his face. He was not just an explorer, but also a man who believed in forgotten truths. Many laughed at his theories back in the cities, but now his heart raced. This temple was unlike any he had seen. It was taller, sharper, and filled with markings that were not all Mayan. Some of the designs had a strange metallic shine, like they were carved yesterday. Mira followed close behind. She was young, but her skill with languages and symbols had already impressed many. Her notebook was filled with careful sketches, and her eyes never stopped moving across the walls. She whispered to herself as she read the glyphs, sounding out the ancient words. Sun in blood. Golden gate. A promise from the sky. She frowned. It did not sound like the usual prayers to gods. There was something different here. Ravi was at the back of the group, carrying heavy equipment on his shoulders. He was an engineer who had joined the mission to help with the machines needed for digging. Unlike Daniel and Mira, he did not believe in myths or old stories. For him, stone was just stone and metal was just metal. Yet even he felt something strange as he touched the surface of the temple. The stone felt warm as if it was alive. The team set up camp at the base of the temple. The sun dipped low and the jungle became a wall of shadows. Fires were lit, and the workers rested after their long climb. But Daniel could not rest. His eyes were fixed on the carvings that covered the base of the stairs. The glyphs seemed to twist in the firelight, and when he moved closer, he noticed small patterns of stars carved into the stone. These are not just decorations, he said aloud. Mira looked up from her notebook. I know, they are maps. Look here. This pattern matches the Orion belt, and this one, the Pleiades. She pointed with her finger. Daniel's heart jumped. The Mayans had always been skilled astronomers, but this went beyond tracking seasons. These carvings were like directions to somewhere far from Earth. That night, the camp was restless. Strange sounds echoed from the jungle. At first, everyone thought it was just animals. But then the ground trembled for a few seconds, a soft shaking that made cups and tools rattle. Ravi rushed to check his equipment. That was not an earthquake, he muttered. The air itself felt heavy, as if something deep below them had awakened. Mira could not sleep. She sat near the fire with her notebook open, trying to put together the broken lines of text she had copied. She read the words softly. The chamber waits beneath the golden stone. Blood opens the way. The gate remembers. Her hands trembled. She felt both fear and wonder. If her translation was correct, then beneath their feet was not just a burial chamber. It was something far more powerful. At dawn, Daniel gathered the team. His eyes shone with excitement even though his voice was calm. We are close to something the world has forgotten. This temple hides a chamber. The signs all point to it. If we find it, we may change everything we know about the past. Some of the workers looked uneasy, but the promise of discovery pushed them forward. The climb up the temple began. The steps were steep and covered with moss, but the team moved together. The higher they went, the more the air seemed to thrum with hidden energy. At the top, a wide stone platform stretched out. From here, they could see the endless jungle. Green waves of trees broken only by rivers of silver water. Yet what drew everyone's eyes was a square block in the middle of the platform. It was not just stone. Parts of it glimmered with gold, and at the very center was a circular mark, smooth and flawless. Mira bent down and placed her hand on it. To her shock, the surface was warm, almost like metal left in the sun. This is not normal, she whispered. Ravi crouched next to her, pulling out his tools. He tapped the block gently. The sound echoed strangely, as if the block was hollow inside. Daniel smiled. This is the entrance. The chamber is below. His words filled the group with both excitement and fear. As the sun rose higher, the platform glowed with light. The golden lines carved into the block shone faintly as if they were guiding the team. The temple was no longer silent. It was watching them. And though no one said it aloud, each of them felt the same thing. They had touched something that did not want to stay hidden any longer. The jungle remained quiet. But deep beneath the temple floor, a hum began to stir. The morning air was heavy with heat. But the team was already hard at work on the stone block at the center of the temple platform. Daniel moved back and forth, giving instructions, his voice full of energy. To him, this was no ordinary stone. He was sure it was the entrance to the chamber that the glyphs had described. Mira sat nearby, her notebook balanced on her knees. She copied more of the carvings from the platform walls. Her fingers traced the golden lines that curved like rivers across the stone. "It is almost like a lock," she whispered. "But not a lock made for a key. It responds to something else." Ravi crouched on the edge of the block, examining it with his tools. He tapped the stone with a metal rod, then placed his ear against it. "It is hollow inside. There is space under this block. But the sound is not right. It is not just stone. It has another layer under it. Something like metal." He looked at Daniel. This temple was built with materials far ahead of its time. No ancient tools could have shaped this. Daniel smiled. "Exactly. That is why we are here. This temple hides more than history. It hides proof." The workers gathered ropes and chisels, ready to move the block. But before they could begin, Mira pointed to the carvings again. "We should be careful. These symbols warn of danger. They say the chamber is not meant to be opened by force. It requires balance." She hesitated, then read the words aloud. "Sun above, blood below, gold between. Only then will the path be clear." The team grew silent. The jungle wind rustled the leaves, but no one spoke. Ravi broke the silence with a laugh. "That is just old ritual writing. We can handle this with tools, not magic." He lifted his hammer and gave the block a firm strike. At once, the golden lines across the platform flared faintly. The air shook with a deep hum that seemed to rise from the earth itself. Everyone stepped back in shock. Ravi froze, his hammer still raised. The glow faded after a few seconds, but the sound of the hum remained in their ears. Daniel's face lit with excitement. It reacted. "Did you see it? This is not just stone. It is a mechanism." Mira's hand shook as she closed her notebook. "You should not strike it again." It responds. "It is waiting for something." She turned to Daniel. "We must solve the puzzle. The ancient ones did not build this for brute force. It is a test." Daniel nodded. He knelt near the block and ran his hand over the smooth circle at its center. The surface was warmer than before. He looked at the team. "We will not break it. We will read it. That is why we have Mira." For the next hours, the team worked in silence under the rising sun. Mira read more glyphs from the walls, piecing them together. Ravi tested the structure with his tools, measuring vibrations when he tapped the block lightly. Daniel encouraged them both, his energy pushing them forward even when frustration grew. By noon, Mira had an idea. She pointed at 3 carved symbols around the block. One was shaped like the sun, another like drops of water, and the third like a hand holding a flame. "These are not decorations. They are markers. I think we need to place something in these spots." Ravi frowned. "What could we place there?" "Perhaps gold," Daniel said. He held up a small artifact they had found earlier at the site. It was a thin golden plate carved with spirals. He carefully set it into the mark shaped like the sun. To everyone's surprise, the plate sank into the stone as if the surface had melted around it. The golden lines lit up faintly again, brighter this time. The workers gasped. Daniel turned to them with a triumphant smile. "It works. The chamber is waiting for us." Mira placed her hand over the next symbol, the drops of water. "It says here, life flows. I think it means water." She poured a small flask into the carving. The water slid across the surface, then vanished into tiny grooves that carried it toward the center of the block. The hum deepened, the air vibrating through their bones. Finally, all eyes turned to the third mark, the hand holding flame. Mira hesitated. "This is the part that worries me. The text mentioned blood, but maybe it only means fire, the energy of life." Ravi struck a match and lit a small flame above the carving. The fire burned for only a few seconds before sinking into the grooves, leaving behind no ash. The golden lines across the block blazed brighter than ever, and the circle at the center began to turn slowly, grinding like gears hidden deep within the temple. The sound grew louder, a low roar that made the platform tremble. The workers stumbled back, but Daniel held his ground, eyes wide with wonder. The doors opening. The circle sank into the block, revealing a spiral of steps leading downward into darkness. A wave of cool air rushed upward, carrying with it the scent of dust, stone, and something sharp, almost metallic. The team stared into the blackness below. Mira hugged her notebook to her chest. Ravi shook his head in disbelief. Daniel's voice broke the silence. We have found the chamber. The jungle around them remained quiet, but inside the temple, the sound of ancient machinery echoed, as if the ruins themselves had awakened. The spiral steps were narrow and carved with strange precision. Daniel led the way, his torchlight flickering against the stone walls. Mira followed close behind, notebook pressed tightly to her chest. Ravi came last, carrying tools in case the path was blocked. The air grew colder the deeper they went, and every step echoed as if the stairwell itself were hollow. At the bottom, the passage opened into a vast chamber. The explorers froze in awe. The walls glowed faintly with golden panels that reflected the torchlight. At the center of the chamber stood a great stone altar, smooth and wide, its edges covered with glyphs that shimmered faintly. Above the altar, strange machinery floated in silence. It was not resting on the ceiling or held by chains. It simply hung in the air, humming softly as if alive. Mira gasped. This is not Mayan. This is not human. She ran her hand along one of the golden walls, tracing symbols that pulsed under her touch. It is like the temple itself is breathing. Daniel stepped toward the altar. His heart raced with excitement. This was the proof he had dreamed of. The link between the ancient world and visitors from the stars. He placed his hand on the smooth surface, and a vibration passed through his arm. It is still working, he whispered. Ravi shook his head in disbelief. This is impossible. No ancient civilization could have built this. The metals, the energy, the floating machine, it is beyond anything we have now. He pulled out his tools and measured the vibrations. The readings made no sense. This machine has a power source that has lasted for centuries without decay. The group spread out, examining the chamber. The golden panels were engraved with murals. They showed humans standing before towering figures with elongated heads and glowing eyes. In every image, the humans were kneeling, holding out bowls of liquid. Mira studied one closely. This is blood, she said softly. The Mayans believed sacrifice was needed to feed the gods. But here, it was not for gods. It was for this machine. Daniel's eyes gleamed. The altar was not symbolic. It was functional. Blood was the key to power this technology. The words made everyone uneasy. The silence of the chamber grew heavy, broken only by the soft hum of the floating structure above them. The hum seemed to change when they spoke of blood, rising and falling as though it was listening. Mira turned a page in her notebook and began sketching the altar. The symbols around it told a story. She read them aloud. The gate waits. The gift of life opens the path. Gold holds the memory. The chosen shall pass, she looked at Daniel. It means this was a gateway, not to another part of the temple, but to somewhere else. Daniel felt his pulse quicken. A stargate, he whispered. Ravi frowned. That is only in stories. Do you really believe this machine can open a doorway to another world? Mira touched one of the glowing symbols on the altar. Instantly, the hum of the machine grew louder. The golden walls brightened and lines of light ran down to the floor, forming a circle around the altar. The air shook with hidden power. Mira quickly pulled her hand back, her face pale. I did not mean to. It reacts to touch. Daniel stepped closer, his eyes locked on the floating machine. It is waiting for activation. The Mayans gave blood to start it. That was the sacrifice chamber. The workers who had followed them down the stairs began to whisper nervously. The air was thick, heavy, and charged. Ravi raised his voice. We should not stay here. If this thing is still alive, we cannot predict what it will do. But Daniel could not move away. He felt drawn to the altar as though it called to him. His torchlight revealed more murals. In one, humans walked through a glowing doorway, vanishing into a star-filled sky. In another, alien figures held golden spheres that shone like suns. The final mural showed destruction, fire falling from the heavens while the machine remained untouched. Mira's voice shook as she spoke. The Mayans may not have understood what they were serving. They thought they were pleasing gods, but perhaps they were only keeping this machine alive. Suddenly, the hum deepened, filling the chamber with a sound like thunder. The floating structure above the altar released a beam of light that scanned across the room. When it touched the explorers, the torches flickered, and their hearts seemed to skip a beat. The beam paused on Daniel, holding steady for a moment before pulling back. Daniel's breath came fast. It is scanning us. It recognizes life. The golden circle on the floor began to glow brighter, the air shimmering as though a doorway was forming. Mira grabbed Daniel's arm. Stop this.
We are not ready.
We do not know what lies beyond. Ravi pulled at Daniel's shoulder. If we trigger this, we could destroy everything. The energy here is unstable. But Daniel could not look away from the light. For him, this was no danger. It was destiny. He raised his hand toward the altar, his fingers inches away from the glowing symbols. The chamber trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling and the workers shouted in fear. The golden panels flickered with strange patterns and the floating machine pulsed brighter than ever. Something was coming. For centuries, the chamber had been silent. Now it was awake. The chamber shook as if the temple itself was breathing after a long sleep. The floating machine above the altar pulsed with waves of light, and every golden panel on the walls blazed like fire. The workers stumbled back toward the stairs, but Daniel stood rooted in place, his eyes wide with wonder. He felt as though history itself was opening before him. Mira grabbed his arm, her voice sharp with fear.
Daniel, stop.
You cannot push further. The text warned us. The altar is not just a tool. It is a gate. Daniel's voice trembled but carried strength. This is what we came for, Mira. Proof that humanity was never alone. Proof that the Mayans touched the stars. Ravi moved between them, his face grim. Listen to yourselves. This is not proof. It is a machine that has been waiting for centuries, and we do not know what it wants. If we activate it fully, we may not survive, but it was already too late. The altar glowed brighter than before. Lines of gold racing from the center toward the walls. The murals shifted as if alive, the carved figures moving like shadows across the golden panels. The images no longer showed only humans and towering figures. They now showed movement, a doorway opening to a world with twin suns and a sky full of strange stars. The air shimmered above the altar, bending like heat rising from stone. Then a sudden burst of light flared outward. The torches died at once, leaving only the golden glow of the chamber. In the center of the altar, a rift appeared, no longer just light but a window. Through it they saw another world. It was not a dream. The vision was sharp, clear. A red desert stretched under a sky painted with purple clouds. Strange towers rose in the distance, their shapes smooth and curved, unlike any human structure. Winds carried glowing dust across the horizon, and for a moment everyone forgot their fear. They were staring into another planet. The workers gasped and fell to their knees, whispering prayers. Mira's hands shook as she scribbled notes into her book, her eyes never leaving the rift. It is real, she whispered. A true gate. The Mayans were not imagining gods. They were serving beings from another world. Ravi's voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed his fear. If it can open, it can bring something here. Do you not see? The chamber was designed for transfer, not just for vision. The floating machine above the altar gave a deep hum, and the rift expanded. A sharp wind blew from it, scattering dust across the chamber floor. The air was no longer still. It carried the scent of metal, fire, and something alien. Daniel's heart raced. This is history. This is the bridge between us and them. Mira turned to him, desperate. Do you not understand? They demanded sacrifices to keep this alive. It was not just about worship. It was about power. This machine fed on life to open the way. That is why they called it the sacrifice chamber. Her words echoed across the chamber, but the machine did not stop. The rift stretched wider and shadows moved within it. Shapes began to form, tall, indistinct figures walking against the red sky. Their outlines shimmered, but they were coming closer with each heartbeat. Ravi stepped forward, raising his voice over the hum. We must shut it down. If they cross into our world, we will not control what follows. This is not discovery. This is danger. Daniel hesitated. The dream of his life was standing before him. To close it felt like betrayal to everything he believed. Yet Mira's fear struck something inside him. He looked again at the murals. The final image still burned in his mind, fire falling from the sky while the machine stood untouched. The chamber shook harder. Cracks appeared in the altar as beams of light shot upward. One of the workers cried out and ran toward the stairs, but most were too afraid to move. The figures in the rift grew clearer now. One raised a long arm, its form made of shifting silver light. Mira clutched Daniel's sleeve. If they come through, we will not be their equals. We will be what we always were, tools. Daniel's breath came fast. He turned to Ravi. How do we stop it? Ravi scanned the golden lines. The machine reacts to touch and energy. If it was started by sacrifice, then perhaps it can be stopped by balance. We must break the cycle before it completes. He pointed to the glowing panels at the base of the altar. If we cut the flow of energy there, the rift may collapse. Daniel nodded and stepped toward the altar, but the air pushed back, heavy like a storm wind. The figures in the rift moved closer, their forms almost stepping through. The chamber thundered with the sound of the machine at full power. Mira shouted over the roar, "Hurry, the gate is opening!" Daniel pressed his hands against the glowing symbols, feeling heat sear into his skin. Ravi joined him, placing his tools against the panel, trying to redirect the flow. The golden lines flickered. The rift wavered. The alien figures paused, their shapes blurring as if confused. The hum rose to a painful pitch, filling every ear. Then with a violent crack, the rift snapped shut, leaving only silence and the faint glow of the altar. The chamber trembled once more, and then fell quiet. The floating machine dimmed, its light fading until it looked like a dead shadow in the air. Everyone stood frozen. Sweat ran down their faces and their hearts pounded. The workers whispered in fear. Mira closed her notebook slowly. Ravi lowered his tools. Daniel stared at the altar, his dream both fulfilled and broken. The chamber had revealed its secret. It was a gate to another world, but it was also a warning. The silence after the collapse of the rift was heavy, almost suffocating. The golden glow on the walls faded until the chamber was dim again. Lit only by the torches the workers had relit with trembling hands. Dust floated in the air and the altar still hummed faintly, like a heartbeat refusing to stop. Daniel stared at it with a mix of awe and sorrow. His dream had been real. The Mayans had indeed opened a gate to another world. But instead of feeling triumph, he now felt a weight pressing against his chest. The murals of fire and destruction were no longer myths. They were warnings. Mira closed her notebook and hugged it tightly. Her voice was quiet but steady. "We should leave. This chamber is not meant to be ours. It is dangerous." Ravi shook his head. "If we leave it as it is, someone else will come. They may not stop in time as we did. We need to find a way to seal this place completely." Before Daniel could answer, the altar pulsed again. Golden lines lit up across its surface. The floating machine above it flickered back to life, its dim glow sharpening into a steady light. The air trembled, and from the center of the altar rose a tall figure. Gasps filled the chamber as the figure took form. It was not flesh and bone, but a body of shifting silver light and dark metal. Its limbs were long, its face smooth except for glowing eyes that burned like embers. The workers dropped to their knees in fear, whispering prayers. Mira's breath caught. "It is a guardian." The text said the chamber was watched. The figure stood still for a moment, then turned its glowing gaze toward the explorers. Its voice was deep but strange, as if it echoed through stone and water. The words were Old Mayan, broken and heavy, yet Mira understood enough to translate. "Why? Open the gate?" the guardian demanded. Daniel stepped forward, his legs shaking. "We came seeking truth. We came to learn who built this place. We are not enemies." The guardian tilted its head. Its eyes glowed brighter. "You are children of those who served. The pact was broken. Yet you return." Mira whispered the words quickly to the others, her hands trembling. Daniel raised his voice again. "We are not servants. We are free. We seek knowledge, not chains." The guardian's light pulsed. The chamber was fed by life. The gate held balance. Without the gift, the rift hungers. Your kind once gave blood to protect the worlds. Without it, destruction follows. Ravi stepped forward, his tone sharp. "There must be another way. We will not feed this machine with lives. If it requires that, then it is wrong." The guardian's gaze shifted to him. "Balance must be kept, or all falls into fire." The words filled the chamber like thunder. The workers backed away toward the stairs, afraid of what would come next. But Daniel did not move. He looked into the glowing eyes and felt something stir inside him. The guardian was not just a machine. It was bound to a task, perhaps against its will. Mira raised her voice carefully. "If the pact was broken long ago, then why are we still here? The world above us has not burned. Humanity has grown. We no longer kneel to the old order. We build our own balance." For the first time, the guardian was silent. Its form flickered, the light shifting as if uncertain. Then it spoke again, slower. "Your kind changed, but the gate is not gone. If it opens without gift, the worlds will break." Daniel's mind raced. "Then we must learn to close it without sacrifice." "Teach us." The guardian's body pulsed with light. Its gaze swept across the chamber, resting once more on the altar. "The gift was life. But life is more than blood. Your kind must find another offering, a choice, beyond fear." Mira scribbled the words quickly, her heart pounding. Ravi stepped closer to Daniel, lowering his voice. It may be giving us a chance. It does not want to kill us. It wants to see if we are different. The Guardian turned back to the explorers. The gate remembers. It will open again.
You must decide.
Give as before or shape new balance, fail, and the fire returns. Its light dimmed and its body began to fade. The chamber grew colder as the last words echoed. We will see, if you are worthy. Then the Guardian vanished into the altar, leaving behind only silence and the faint hum of the machine. The workers rushed up the stairs, eager to escape the chamber. Mira leaned against the wall, trying to steady her breathing. Ravi wiped the sweat from his brow, his mind full of questions. Daniel stood still, staring at the altar. His dream had shifted again. The truth was not only about visitors from the stars. It was about responsibility. The Mayans had given sacrifices to keep the balance. Now it was their turn to find a new path, one that would not demand blood. The jungle above was still waiting, silent and ancient, but below the chamber was alive and the Guardian's warning was clear. The past had returned, and the future depended on what choice humanity would make. The group climbed back into the upper passage, their torches flickering against the damp stone. The echoes of the Guardian's words still clung to their thoughts. No one spoke at first. Even Ravi, who often filled silence with ideas, had nothing to say. Each of them knew the choice was heavier than anything they had faced before. When they stepped into the jungle air again, the night felt sharper. The stars were bright above the trees, and the cries of unseen animals called across the darkness. For Daniel, it was almost overwhelming. After the chamber's heavy silence, the living world above felt fragile, as if the Guardian's warning already stretched its shadow across the earth. Mira broke the silence at last. The Guardian said life was the gift, but it also said life is more than blood. What could that mean? Ravi rubbed his forehead. Maybe it means time or energy, something that shows value without death. Daniel sat on a fallen log staring at the earth. His mind replayed the murals in the chamber. They had shown sacrifice, yes, but also harvests, offerings of food, and gifts of art. Maybe the Mayans had given more than blood, at least at first. Perhaps they had tried to give other things before fear and desperation locked them into one path. The gate does not have to take life, Daniel said slowly. It has only been fed that way because it was the simplest offering. Mira's eyes brightened. So we find another way. Something the altar can accept. Ravi shook his head. That's easy to say, but what? We cannot guess forever. Before they could continue, one of the workers, a man named Luis, approached cautiously. He was older than most of the crew, and carried himself with quiet wisdom. His voice was soft but clear. My grandmother used to tell us stories of the temple. She said our ancestors believed the gods were not cruel. They gave life, so they asked for life in return. But life can also mean creation, music, art, the spirit of what we make. Maybe the Guardian still waits for such a gift. The group fell silent, listening. Daniel looked at Luis with new respect. Your grandmother may be right. If that Guardian is more than a machine, if it understands meaning, then creation could be enough. Mira pressed her notebook to her chest. Knowledge itself is life. Writing, memory, history. Perhaps that is the offering we need. Ravi leaned back against a tree, his face thoughtful. But how do we give knowledge to a machine built for blood? Daniel stood. His voice grew stronger. We try, we have to. The Guardian said the gate will open again. If we wait until that day comes without an answer, we lose everything. We must return and test it, Mira nodded. I will bring my notes. They are the first record written in centuries inside that chamber. If meaning can be offered, perhaps the altar will recognize it. Ravi still looked doubtful, but at last he sighed. If we fail, the gate might react. Are we ready for that risk? Daniel looked around at the group. The workers watched him quietly, their faces tired but brave. The risk is real, he admitted. But if we do nothing, the greater danger will come. We owe it to the world to try. The next morning, under the pale light of dawn, they returned to the temple. The air was cool, but the deeper they went, the more the heat and weight of the earth pressed down. When they entered the chamber again, the altar still hummed faintly, waiting. Mira stepped forward first. She placed her notebook on the surface of the stone. Her hands lingered on the cover before she pulled away. This is knowledge, she whispered. This is life carried forward. For a moment, nothing happened. The silence deepened. Then a golden line spread across the altar. The notebook trembled as if the stone was breathing. A faint glow seeped into the pages, lighting them from within. The air filled with a low hum that grew steadier, softer than before. Daniel felt his heart leap. The altar was responding. The guardian appeared again, rising from the altar in a flicker of silver and light. Its glowing eyes swept the chamber, resting on the notebook. It spoke, its voice deeper but less harsh. You offer memory, creation of mind. This is life also. Mira clutched Daniel's arm in relief. Ravi stepped closer. Does it work? Will the gate stay closed? The guardian's form pulsed slowly. This gift binds for a time. Not forever. But it shows change. It shows choice. The path of freedom is open, yet the gate is not ended. You must continue. Offer not fear but spirit, or the fire returns. Daniel's chest swelled with determination. Then we will continue. We will not give blood. We will find a way to keep the balance with creation. The guardian's light dimmed. Then you are different from those before. Remember, the test is not finished. With that, it faded back into the altar. The glow around the notebook slowly vanished, though the pages remained marked with faint golden lines like veins of light pressed into the paper. Mira touched the notebook with trembling fingers. It accepted it. It truly accepted it. Ravi exhaled a breath he had been holding. For now. But we must give more. This was only the beginning. Daniel looked at his team, then at the altar. The path ahead was uncertain. But hope now flickered where before there had been only dread. Humanity had been given a chance to replace blood with freedom. And he knew they could not waste it. The chamber waited, silent but alive, as if listening for what would come next. The jungle was quiet that evening. The campfires burned low, casting soft light on the tired faces of the team. Everyone sat close, speaking in low voices about what had happened in the chamber. They had proven that the altar could accept knowledge instead of blood. But the guardian's warning echoed in all their minds. This was not the end. It was only the beginning of a longer test. Daniel sat apart from the others, staring into the flames. His thoughts circled endlessly. The Mayans had given blood because it was simple, a sacrifice that the altar understood without question. But now humanity had shown a new path. Still, Daniel wondered if it would be enough. Mira approached and sat beside him. She held her notebook, now marked with faint golden veins. The pages shimmered as if carrying a secret fire. I think the guardian respected this gift, she said softly. But it also demanded more. What if it wants endless offerings? Daniel looked at the glowing pages. Then we must keep giving. Not with fear, but with spirit. If it needs proof of who we are, then we must show the best of us. The next morning, the team gathered again at the chamber. The golden walls reflected their torchlight, casting long shadows. The altar waited, silent but alive. The faint hum in the stone told them it was listening. Ravi stepped forward this time. In his hands, he carried a small device he had built from the tools in their camp. Wires, batteries, and a polished piece of metal formed a simple light source. It was not powerful, but when he pressed a switch, it glowed with steady brightness. He placed it on the altar. This is creation, Ravi said firmly. It is the work of human hands. It brings light where there is none. The altar responded with a low vibration. The light flickered, then grew brighter as the altar drew its energy into itself. Golden lines spread across the surface again. The guardian appeared, rising in its form of silver and light. Its voice filled the chamber. You offer craft, the work of hand and mind. This is life also. The path of choice grows. The team exchanged looks of relief. Mira whispered, it accepts more than one form. It truly seeks proof of life in all its colors. Daniel stepped forward. We will not give blood. We will give knowledge, creation, and spirit. That is who we are. The guardian's eyes glowed brighter. Then you are free to continue. But know this. The gate will open again by your choice or by time. What you offer will decide if it brings ruin or renewal. The guardian faded once more, leaving silence. The group stood together, their hearts pounding. They had not only avoided sacrifice, but had created a new bond. The altar now held both Mira's notebook and Ravi's light, glowing faintly as if alive. When they returned to the surface, the morning sun painted the jungle in gold. For the first time since finding the chamber, Daniel felt the weight on his chest lighten. He gathered the workers and spoke to them. The temple is no longer a place of blood. It will not demand fear. It will demand creation and spirit. From this day, no more lives will be given here. Instead, we will offer what shows the best of us. This is our choice, and it will shape the future. Luis, the elder worker, raised his voice. Then our children will know a different story, not of fear but of courage. The temple will be remembered not as a prison, but as a place of hope. The word spread through the camp, lifting spirits. Some wept quietly, others smiled with relief. The shadow that had hung over them seemed to lift, replaced by the glow of determination. That night, Daniel looked at the stars again. They stretched endless across the sky, the same stars the Mayans had watched centuries before. But now he felt something had changed. Humanity had proven that they could choose another path. Not the path of fear, but of freedom. Mira joined him, holding her notebook close. "Do you think the gate will open again?" she asked. Daniel nodded. "Yes, one day it will. But when it does, it will not be with chains. It will be with choice. And by then we will be ready." Ravi came to stand with them, his small light glowing faintly in his hand. "We showed the Guardian that we are not the same as before. That may be the most powerful gift of all." The three of them stood together, the jungle night wrapping around them. They had faced the ancient temple, uncovered its secrets, and stood before a being older than memory. Yet they had not bowed. They had chosen to give something greater than blood. And in that choice, they had revealed the truth of humanity's strength. The Mayan temple of blood and gold no longer stood as a place of sacrifice. It now stood as a symbol of what humans could become when they dared to defy fear and embrace freedom. The story of the chamber would live on, not as a tale of death, but as the proof that even in the deepest shadows of the past, humanity could choose light.